Omicron. It's very infectious. We're going to keep getting waves of new variants which are thriving because they're more infectious. And that actually makes them quite dangerous because they infect a lot more people. So we're seeing a doubling now every 2 weeks roughly of cases, hospitalisations. Deaths are up now to an average of 16 a day. So a huge impact on health.
We have tried to protect our health system for the past 2 years. You know, we went into lockdowns, that was our singular sort of focus. But for the past few weeks, we have had the aged care sector, we have had surgeons, we have had EDs saying they are in crisis, that they are getting overwhelmed. So, but we don't seem to be doing anything about it. It's a very hands-off approach from the government, isn't it?
Yeah, I think obviously a lot of people are over the pandemic. We all want it to have stopped some time ago, but we can't wish it away. It is a reality. It's, as people say, it's an inconvenient truth like climate change. We have to change the way we live to manage this threat until we get perhaps some very effective vaccines or antivirals in the future. So for the foreseeable future, it is about doing a small number of things very well. And I think the two basics are, if you're sick, don't go out, and that stops all viruses, all infections. And the other one is we have to turn into a mask-using society. Societies that have embraced mask use are doing very well, like Japan, South Korea. I think the driving metaphor is a good one. You know, you put on your safety belt to protect you. It's a bit like, you know, getting your boosters and vaccines, and you don't drink and drive, and that's to protect everyone else on the roads. And remember now, you know, roughly 1 in 1,000 people who get this virus are dying from it. So if you go out when you have this infection and you affect your friends and family and other people, you are going to be killing some people, just like drinking and driving. So we need to have a massive shift in thinking about this.
Yeah, I was just going to say to you, you know, what I'm hearing is that it is up to us now. It is down to our personal responsibility. But how are we doing at that, do you think?
Well, I think we need both. Just like to make the roads safe, you have rules. And it's also, I think, New Zealanders want to do the right thing, but they also have a strong sense of fairness. They don't want to be the only person in the room wearing a mask. I think we need to know, and we need to be supported in that. So if when my 12-year-old goes to school, we give her a very good mask and say, please wear it. And she comes home and she says, I'm the only one wearing the mask in my classroom. And, you know, obviously she's not wearing it after a while.
It makes it difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to stand out. And how are we doing at masking? When I go to malls right now, I see a lot of people who have given up.
Yeah, look, I think we need a social norm that you wear a mask if you're indoors with other people who are not part of your family, and that you have to have the mask on the whole time. Now, obviously, it means shifting a lot more social things outdoors, covered areas where there's good ventilation. You can take your mask off, obviously, to have a drink and socialise. Otherwise, we need to be a mask-wearing society until we're through the worst of this. And it may be, if we get through winter, that will be good. We might have to wear masks for the foreseeable future in indoor environments. But basically, it means you can get on with life, you can do everything, pretty much, but you need to be wearing a mask now because we have very few alternatives. I mean, boosters are good, particularly if you're vulnerable, and we will get the next generation of vaccines in the future that will be more effective as well.
Do we need to speed up our next booster round? Because it's heading now, isn't it? We know that their boosters are available for over 50s, but do we just need to open that right up?
Oh, very much so. Unfortunately, we're seeing this hesitancy because a third of adults who are eligible for their third dose haven't had it. So that's what we're hitting. Of course, many of the older people who are more vulnerable or people with underlying illness are getting their boosters, which is absolutely the right thing to do.
Well, are we COVID fatigued, Michael? And it feels like we are. And how do we break through that, given that we're back in a serious position?
Well, I think we do need a mixture of regulation and obviously personal responsibility, but we need to, I think, say, mask mandate for schools, I think is critical because there's a lot of transmission in that environment. And also children are great educators. They're wearing the mask during the day. They're very good at picking up new behaviours, and that behaviour also translates into the home setting.
But the government does seem to be taking quite a hands-off approach now. The Prime Minister has said we will not go into red again. Has it become, are they sort of following the sentiment of the nation, do you think, that we're over it, we're fatigued, we don't want to go back to those places?
Yeah, I think so. But in the end, I think in a way it's not really so much about red or green or amber. it's actually about adopting and actually mandating some specific behaviours. I think that's going to be quite understandable for people. People have got the idea that on a summer's day, you put on sunblock and a sun hat. When you get in a car, you put on your safety belt. When you go to any indoor event, you put on your mask. And you have a mandate to back that up, so that when you don't feel lonely being the only person in the room with a mask, you say, actually, this is mandated for some settings.
Well, mask mandates were highly controversial last time, but I want to ask you, what are we looking at here? We are at 10,000, nearly 11,000 cases a day, 500 hospitalisations. Are we creeping back up to that 25,000 case a day mark that we saw in May?
We could easily get there. Now, it's much harder to predict now because it's not a blank slate anymore. There's a lot of immunity around. It's very hard to model that. And also we can't learn so much from overseas because a whole lot of countries are seeing this wave, but they've seen several waves now. So it's much harder. In the past we could see what was happening overseas. We are now so well connected with the rest of the world. We're getting hundreds of infected people arriving here a day from all over the world. So it's hard to know. But it's doubling more slowly. It could get to the same size as the first wave. We could have up to 20,000 a day. We could have 1,000 people in hospital. We could be back up to 20 people a day dying. But actually, it's bad enough now. I mean, we've got 16 people a day dying. If you add that up over a year, it could be 5,000 people dead. Yeah, that's more than 10 times the road toll.
If we do get to that 25,000 a day, would you expect to see the government stepping in again?
Well, I think we need to step in now because you can't wait till you reach the peak. You've got to start working on this now because there's a lag from when you slow down transmission to when it does peak. So I'd say we need a mask mandate in schools immediately, and we need to think about the other environments where we need to have mask use. And I think focusing on that rather than what colour traffic light we're at, I think people would understand that.
There's a narrative that COVID will mutate, that it's already sort of doing this, that to become less severe. Is there scientific evidence to back that up?
No. Many of our worst infectious diseases have not got more benign over time. In general, they stay fairly consistent. Sometimes they even get worse. But we've seen that with this virus. Its virulence, that's its severity, has gone up and down along the way. But in general, it's just getting more infectious or better at evading immunity. And the only reason it's here is because these new subvariants are better at escaping immunity. And so this is what this virus is doing. It's showing this ability to keep producing new, more infectious variants. And so we need to plan for that and say, actually, vaccines will get re-engineered, just like with flu vaccines, to help us get ahead of that. But we have to do more. That's not enough on its own. And when you look at the countries that are succeeding, they are mask-using societies.
Well, Dr. Michael Baker, thank you so much for joining us in the studio here on The Nation this morning.
Thanks for having me.